Welcome back to another episode of the Devpreneur. As always, I am joined by Tom.
Mr. Thomas.
That's right. Today we're just going to talk about what we have been working on over the last couple of weeks, both on our personal sites and the applications we're building / running. So for Tom, that'll be tomzaragoza.com and vocalmatic.com. For me, that's charliereese.ca and clientelify.com. Tom, why don't you start? I mean, I know you just launched your little forum finder tool, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. All right. What's it about? So basically, Google does not have the ability to search forums, and like anymore. So what they did was they got rid of that a couple of years ago. But that's kind of how I got my start, right? Like I was finding forums, people asking questions about whatever I was building on forums, and then I was making accounts and stuff like that. So I decided to kind of rip off what's already kind of out there. And all they do is they add a filter to a search. And the search and the filter is like in title, it's like forum or send message or like view threads, stuff like that, stuff that like would appear on forums. And basically you put your query in and then I just build the query for you and I just redirect you to the Google page. So it's just a very simple way to search for things on forums.
Okay, it's like a Google query wrapper kind of. So it just kind of like puts everything in the correct format. That's cool.
Yeah. And so
is it like indexed in Google already?
No. I just like launched it last night.
Okay.
Just testing it out. It's kind of funny because like if you actually use it quite a bit, Google stops you and it's like, are you a robot?
That's right. Yeah. You can only Google so many times.
So release that. I think I'm going to start to build because I think I'm trying to start to brand myself as like kind of like an SEO type of person. And so
I mean, you're good at it. That's kind of how Vocalmatic took off, right?
Yeah. So might as well start building that brand around that for myself. And I think the cool thing about SEO is that it's not just one thing. It's not just marketing, right? It kind of encompasses everything, right? It's like, do you have a good...
Yeah, it's copy and writing as well. And totally.
Yeah. And technical, right? Like you have to be technical for it as well. So I think I'm going to start building all these random like free SEO tools, just release it on my domain name and then kind of use that as a funnel towards like a course, right? Of how to actually start up a company or your own SaaS product or whatever using SEO as the main driver. So yeah, kind of just working on that, building out the site, starting to come together. I like it's fun. It's like I've been struggling with like, should I build a ghost blog or should I use WordPress? But I'm like, I'm going to take the Charlie Reese route and build it up myself until I have this like tool that's like my own, and then who knows what it might turn into, right?
Yeah, the slow and then fast path.
Mm-hmm.
For our 5 audience members, like for their benefit, what Tom's talking about is I built a Rails engine for blogging because I like using Ruby on Rails to build the projects I work on. And so basically I just get a blogging engine out of the box and it comes with all the database migrations I need to store like blog posts as well as photos for the blog posts. Comes with the migration to store them in an S3 bucket and all that stuff. I'm trying to think. It doesn't come with administrative login out of the box, but I think in the README it tells you how to set it up. Because I'm just using Devise for that stuff. That's what Tom meant by that. Obviously, it took longer than setting up WordPress or Ghost, but now I have
full control,
like an engine for blogging that looks exactly how I want it and has like 0 setup time.
Yeah. And full control over routes and all that stuff too. Like, should you want to get it, and it's just it's your own code base, right? It's like you can't tell me what to do, right? I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah, Rails is really good for building tools like that because they expose so much functionality and they make it really easy, but you still get full control. So if you build it as an engine, as long as you're okay with their framework, you can have full control of the routing and all the logic and whatnot, but you don't have to like actually build the framework. So it's kind of, in my opinion, I mean, I like Rails, that's why, but best of both worlds, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Cool. How about you? What's new on your ends?
Yeah. So for me, I've started to try. I mean, I say try. I'm not trying that hard. It's not a top priority. Maybe it should be. Blogging more often. Like I think it's going to be like once a week, maybe now, like kind of short articles, like 300 or 400 words, mostly on somewhat technical stuff. Like, here's this cool thing I figured out how to do that I couldn't find documentation on or whatever. I think my next post is going to be on time zones.
Yeah.
So time zones are just annoying. I learned through building Clientelify. So I've largely finished, I would say it's basically done V1 of the backend engine. So now it's really just kind of like creating views and whatnot, a couple forms. And so what Clientelify does is it sends both texts and emails, and you can schedule them at whatever time you want. And it also does templating. So you can create templates so that the text and emails follow a certain pattern and like autofill someone's name or email address or your company name or whatever. And then it'll also send calendar invites, which means you can send basically like appointment requests to people on Outlook or Gmail or whatever. And it uses a universal format. The trouble with that I ran into recently, I just didn't even think about it, is sometimes depending on how you structure your logic, even if you capture someone's time zone and you say, okay, take this and put it in this time zone, you can't do things like plus 3 days. Like you can't add a block of time because you can traverse daylight savings time. So you need to account for that before you add time, which just changes the code a little bit. And so I was running into some issues there where I was like, why is it 1 hour before I'm expecting it to be? And it only took me it took me longer than I'd like to admit, but like not that long to figure it out. So I was doing that, I was setting that up. And then I was also spending time working on making it as easy as possible to sign up for a paid account for Clientelify. Because by default right now, when you create an account, you just go straight into trial, regardless of where you start.
Yeah.
And that lets you start that. And for a lot of reasons, that's not the best thing to do, but it's also super simple. So I'm only building one flow at the start. It's like create an account, and then you have an account, you can do stuff like send emails, text, calendar reminders.
Yeah.
And so I built that out, and I'm working on building the flow for upgrading the account to a paid account.
Sure.
And just trying to make that super, super easy. And then after I finish that, about half done that, it will just be kind of creating views for the actual creation and scheduling of the messages, both text and email, as well as sending calendar appointments. Yeah. And then after that, I think I'm going to have a soft launch because I'm not going to launch with full templating ability or the ability to schedule recurring messages, emails, texts, and calendar appointments, because there's actually quite a bit of complexity that comes along with that. Especially when you want to like change one in a series, but you want to keep the series the same. And it's just like the changes you need to make to ICS files, which is like the universal calendar invite format, is not super simple. And there's just like other changes that need to be made. And it's just going to be kind of complicated. So I'm going to hold off on that functionality, and I might hold off on the product hunt launch until then. I'm undecided. But after I launch, I'm going to get it in the hands of one of my buddies who is a massage therapist that wants to use it. So he's going to sign up on a fairly heavily discounted price as the first paying user. And then I'm going to start reaching out to the people on the wait list. We've had, I think 20 people sign up for our wait list. Other than our beta list launch, we didn't really promote it. I think we got a little over 10 people from beta list, and we actually, I think, got like around 8 from LinkedIn, which is kind of nice. Yeah. I think that's where they were from. I didn't actually track the like source to conversion. So I don't know. It was just, that was kind of the time frame they happened. That's kind of it for me. Just kind of like launching V1, selling it to a couple of people, and then just like making sure it's kind of running, they like it, getting their feedback while I add like V2 features, which in my mind are kind of like after they're added, like that's kind of like the vision I had for this small business product. And then after that, it'll just be feedback and sales, as well as like product iterations as I get feedback, which will probably take a lot of time. But yeah, that's kind of the plan. I mean, I'm definitely launching with a little bit more than I originally wanted, which is why it's taking a little bit longer. Like at first, I didn't want to launch with calendar invites. But the initial feedback was just like businesses, which makes sense. They thought of it as scheduling. They didn't like think like I want to schedule a text or an email. They were like, I need a scheduling solution.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, well, it has to do scheduling then. And like the most bare bones scheduling I can do is like sending around calendar invites. So it has to at least do that. Yeah. And then in V2, I can include like public facing scheduling and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's what's new with me. I think we've talked about it on the podcast. I feel almost back to 100%, which is super nice. Yeah. So working out and all that stuff again. Sorry. That's right. Still not like 100, but a lot better.
Yeah.
Like, totally functional.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll throw something at you. What is a really good podcast episode that you've listened to recently?
I don't actually listen to too many podcasts. I maybe do like one or two a week. And like almost entirely indie hackers, to be honest. I love that podcast. Although like I find like that podcast, it just like really depends on the guests they have on. Like Cortland's an amazing interviewer. But I find recently they've gotten a little looser with who they're letting on. And so before it was like 100% of them, like amazing. Whereas now it's like, sometimes I'll listen to like the first 5 minutes and be like, I don't really care what this person has to say. It's just like, it's not relevant to me, or like, I don't know. I just like, I'm not interested for whatever reason. Not that they're not interesting. It's just, I don't know. I just think because he's doing more now, the like filters got a little looser on who gets through, I guess.
Makes sense.
But I'm trying to think of what was a good one. So one I really like, and a product I think is hilarious, is Cortland on the Indie Hackers podcast recently interviewed the guys who do Less Annoying CRM, or one of the guys who did Less Annoying CRM. Really good one. It's a product I've known of for a while. I thought it was hilarious when I first saw it. I was thinking of trying to build a CRM actually for a while. And I actually started on one and then bailed after like a month. And I was like, wow, there's like a lot of stuff here. So after I like actually digged in, I was like, nah, I don't want to do this. It's just too much. Because I want to do it by myself. It's too much to do well by yourself, in my opinion, in like a reasonable amount of time. And so I really like what they're doing, just because they're like intentionally not trying to be different than anybody. They're just trying to be, I don't even know if user friendly is the right word. They use the word, but if you actually go on the demo, like it's not a super user friendly product. You can just click through to a demo on their website. I mean, it's not bad. It's a lot better than a lot of CRMs just because there's less there. But I think as they've added features, it actually has become less user friendly than it used to be. Yeah. But I like it just because they were like, yeah, we're building a CRM. It just like has a bunch of basic features and it's just like affordable. And we have one plan and you can sign up and you can add as many people as you want. We'll just like add $10 a month for each person.
Yeah.
There's no like weird, like corporate, whatever pricing.
Yeah.
And I think that's largely because they're really going after small businesses. Like they don't have, although I'm sure their support's great, they don't have like these like premium supported whatever options that you see with enterprise stuff.
Yeah.
So I really like that one. And I mean, I think I sent you one today. I watched like the first 20 or 30 minutes while I was eating my lunch. But I love DHH, the creator of Ruby on Rails.
Yeah.
Just because he's such a pragmatic guy. I mean, A, I love Ruby on Rails. B, super pragmatic. C, he was one of the founders of Basecamp. And he's kind of just done the no fundraise, I guess, like product slash company building thing very successfully. Multiple times, you might even argue, depending on what you include in the successful products he's built. And so really, like pretty much any interview you find with him, he did one with Tim Ferriss as well recently. Wasn't the one I sent you, but that was amazing. Yeah. I think it's a couple years old now, at least. But he's just a super interesting dude. He's also like a semi-pro race car driver, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's like not what you'd expect like a very renowned programmer to be. And he just like, I think he's pretty insistent on working 40 hours a week and enjoying his life. And he just seems to have really good balance.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd recommend any podcast by him as well.
Cool.
What about you?
So on the walk back home, I just listened to one where there's a guy. So I follow this one podcast. It's called Leveling Up. It's by Eric Sue. He owns two things. He owns or I'm sure he has a lot of other things, but their spiel is SEO, right? So I consume their stuff almost like every single day. And he interviewed this one guy, I forgot the guy's name, but it's called kindlepreneur.com. And so they're kind of they're talking about like how writing a book can like kind of like accelerate your career. And he talks about one example of like a lawyer, right? And the lawyer, he was like, he was thinking of like writing a book on what to do when you get a DUI, right? Like, so like just the stuff that you should expect when that happens, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so what happened was, you know, people would come to him, but like, you know, you kind of look at lawyers. Oh, he went to Harvard. Oh, he went to so-and-so. He went to this and that. Yeah. And then that's like your review of that guy. But imagine you roll up into a place and he has a book on his table, how to deal with DUIs or whatever. And he gives that like to his clients and be like, hey, just have this book. Read it if you want it, whatever. Like, if you just want to read it, just go ahead. And then apparently, like he's thinking, like, you know, that kind of differentiates him, right? And it's a good way to kind of get a leg up in whatever industry you're in, if it makes sense. Actually, maybe not whatever industry, but like if you're in like kind of like a consulting, I'm sure it could apply to multiple things, right?
Yeah, I mean, it helps build. It's like one of many things that could help build prestige, right? 'Cause like not a lot of people have like super fancy degrees from prestigious schools just because they don't let a lot of people in. But in terms of writing a book, even if it doesn't sell a lot of people just don't take the time to write a book. So it's like, it would be seen as a prestigious endeavor, I would think. Just not a lot of people do it. I totally agree. I mean, I know back in my IB days when I was at IB training, I went to IB training. It was almost a year actually after I started, just because I started my job like halfway through when the first years went to IB training. So I just like never went. And then I got to go after a full year, which was sweet. And it filled in some of my knowledge gaps and it was super useful. But the company that was training us for our, I guess, financial modeling training, as well as like the other things we get trained on, they wrote a couple books and they were actually quite good. I kept one of them. It was the best resource I've seen on how to build M&A models. I guess pragmatically it would be the word, and in a user-friendly way, because in investment banking, I think this is true in programming as well. Actually, it's kind of funny. There's a lot of similarities. People don't appreciate that. I mean, I think very few people cross from one side to the other, so I get it. But much like in programming and IB, if someone makes just a horrible fucking model with like shit just everywhere and like a bunch of repeated stuff they don't need, and it's just like a spaghetti model, just like spaghetti code, and it's like I don't even know like where the fuck everything's coming from. It's just like all going back and forth, like hard to understand, not labeled well. If you can't understand it, you're seen as stupid. It's never the fault of the person who made the model. Which is why I really like that book. So it was like, okay, well, here's how you can make a model without making everybody hate you, which is a super fucking useful skill. But I mean, it's totally true with coding too. Like if someone makes something and like they don't make a README because they're a jackass and they don't test it because they're a programmer. I feel like a lot of people don't test it, but I guess that makes them a jackass too. And they just like don't structure their code well, like a jackass. And then you have to like take over the product and you're like, hey, I like can't really figure out what's going on because you didn't document anything or test anything. And your code, like maybe it doesn't suck, but like I am finding it not intuitive. Again, you're like seen as the one who has the problem. And I just think it's so funny. So anyway, that investment banking training firm, they had this really good book on basically how not to be a jackass when you're making models. Yeah.
Yeah,
I actually think, sorry, what were you going to say?
that's just the one episode that stuck out the most to me.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, we just started the week, but yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think a lot of, I guess, like web application frameworks could use books that are basically like obviously not titled this, but like how to build a web application in Laravel or whatever, like without being a jackass.
Mm-hmm.
So like people can easily understand what's going on. And one thing I do that I actually saw most of the people who are really good at modeling and investment banking do, and I actually haven't seen this a lot in programming. I don't know why, but people like it. It's just like one of those things that didn't transfer over.
Right.
Is when I have different sections. So I might have like a model in my application that like handles logic for a user. And so my user model might have like logic that validates the data that goes in. And then it might also have logic that gets run by various like events in the like model creation or saving process, like hooks. Sure. And then I'll have like public facing methods, private facing methods, associations, and I'll separate all of them by by I guess 3 lines of comments. So I'll have one line that's just a bunch of is it called an ampersand in most languages? That's a comment.
Yeah.
Like the number thing, the slack sign.
Oh,
an ampersand is the and.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like the number sign, whatever that is. A hash. Is that what it is?
Hash.
A hash.
Yeah.
So I'll have a hash just like going across the screen so you can see something start in. And then in capital letters, I'll type what is like coming up next, like associations or validations or like public methods or private methods. And then I'll have another line of hashes going across. It just makes a file like so much easier to read when you break it up like that. And I used to, although I don't anymore, I used to number it too, like 1, like validations, 2, like hooks or whatever, 3, public methods, whatever. Yeah. It's just so much easier to follow when people do stuff like that. And so, I mean, if anyone's thinking of writing a book, this is something that people need to be taught to do. Yeah. Like people know they should be writing tests, although I think people have started focusing on the wrong parts of that. Like testing is super important because it allows you as your application grows to continue iterating really quickly because like you know right away when you break something. But the other side of that is your tests need to run fast or people aren't going to run them very frequently. And then it'll take longer to figure out when people break stuff. So your local development environment needs to like pretty fairly reflect production. And if you need to use a bunch of Docker containers for that, then it obviously like it may slow down your tests a little bit depending on your machine. I don't know, whatever. So that could be an issue. But the other issue could be people focus on like coverage, like how many lines have I executed? And I feel like that can like kind of bring about potentially bad behavior. Not because you shouldn't have high coverage. It's just that if that's how you're measuring what you're doing, I feel like you could just write code that kind of like executes the method and not think about, okay, well, why am I using this method? What are the scenarios under which I'm using the method? Do those. And then like, maybe you miss 10% of the class, but like if you're testing your public facing methods, like, does it matter if one of your private methods isn't being used? Like, no. Like, should the private method then be taken out? Yes. But like, that's going to make your code coverage potentially fall to like 90%, which is fine because like no one's using that method and whatever. Anyway, right. I have a lot of thoughts on this, Tom.
Testing, stuff like that.
Yeah, testing is one of those things that I've gotten a little more into now. And I totally get why people preach it. But I honestly think test-driven development is hard if you're not super comfortable with the framework. Like you have to like really know to start by writing a test that like says exactly what you want the application to do. You kind of have to know how the framework works really well. Because not only do you have to know what you're going to have to write before you write the test, you have to know what you have to write in the test to like test all the redirects and whatnot if it's a web application, right? And so that's hard when you start. It's like, I don't even know how to like say this in a test, like let alone potentially what I actually need to do. So it's like hard to write a test for that. But once you get started, I do find it like really speeds everything up.
Yeah.
Like one of those learning curve things. Yeah. Coolsies. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add. What else have I been hacking on recently? That's kind of it. that's kind of it for me. What about you? Anything else cool going on with Locomatic?
Yeah. Wow, I forgot about that. Recently launched. So two things. I added Hotjar, which is incredible. It
Okay.
actually shows your pitfalls of like where people drop off, and you can kind of see how people are using it, and your intentions are where your mouse pointer kind of goes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just really interesting to see the behaviors. And they have like funnels, so you can kind of see the funnels of the steps, right? And you can also see like heat maps and things like that to see where people are going, where they're clicking and stuff like that. And so that can influence like how a landing page looks, right? So it's like if 66% of people, or like 40% of people click on a button to take you to the register page, you might as well just make that like one of the biggest options, and then just make it like, right? Just kind of put it up there and put it into the register flow.
Or like maybe that should be like the more prominent page they land on to begin with, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And so it allows for that and seeing the flows. And
did it slow down your site a lot or no?
No, it's about the same. Yeah.
Okay.
And working with a designer on that. So somebody like offered to help out because they're trying to get
a portfolio or whatever.
Yeah, but he's a super cool guy.
Awesome.
So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna learn like actual design stuff now, which is sweet.
Have you dove into Sketch yet? Is he going to use Sketch?
I don't know. Maybe like what he's gonna do is we worked with like here are the flows that we care about the most. Here are the flows that affect the bottom line the most, and here, you know what I mean. So find those, optimize those, and bring the user to the on the fastest path to success, and let's just optimize for that, right? So I don't know. I'm not a designer, so I don't know if I like.
Honestly, I used to feel the same, and like maybe this is. I don't feel like it is an insensitive thing to say, because like I kind of did it at my last job. Like I had to design several things. There's like not a lot to know, especially if you've already been building the UIs. Yeah. And like I would say the de facto, I think there's a couple de facto tools in the industry. I can't remember what Adobe's de facto tool is.
In design?
But they have one. It's like, yes, thank you. That might be it. And then there's a couple others, but I think the one that's kind of like becoming the de facto one is Sketch. And it is so user friendly. And you can literally, the way I learned it, I started with a tutorial. It was like a $10 tutorial on Udemy. It was like 5 hours or something. I watched like 2/3 of it, and then I was like, I feel like I get it. Used it for a while, was using it like kind of sort of effectively. And then I was like, okay, I want to actually know what like Sketch can do. And then I just sat down one day for like 4 hours and just like read the docs start to finish.
Right.
Might have even been longer than 4 hours. It might have been like a full day. And then that was all there was to know. And then after you make a couple flows with it, it's kind of like, that's what designers do. They just like make like very user-friendly, desirable like interfaces, designs, whatever. Yeah. And the more you use it, the more you actually start to like learn to build your own like icons and whatever, because it's actually like not that hard once you start using it. And there's so many great libraries, which I mean, it makes sense in hindsight, because with code, like not everyone is expected to create this amazing framework like Laravel and then like run your web application on that. Like that would be crazy. Like Laravel is huge. There's so many lines of code, and design is exactly the same. It's like not everyone is expected, and like 99.9% of designers don't create their own like whatever. They're just like using libraries that you can import into like Sketch or whatever design tool they're using to design things. So like one of the really cool things about those ecosystems is if you use Bootstrap or Material Design or whatever on your site, libraries exist for that in the design tool. So like you can import a button that just like looks exactly how you want it without designing it. You can just like drop it in. And then if it's a well-designed library, you can also go and change the defaults in the library to like match your overrides for your color scheme. And then it's also really easy to hook it up so people can click through. So if you wanted to show users before you actually coded it out, like, oh, here's all the flows, they can actually click through. And so it's one of those things where like it does totally take a couple weeks, if not like, I mean, it probably takes like a couple months of like using it heavily to like get up to speed. But like once you're up to speed, yeah, obviously a professional designer is going to be better, but like not by a lot. They'll just be like better in terms of
Yeah.
like intuitive design choices, but not necessarily that much better in terms of the tool. Like it has a much less steep learning curve than programming by like a significant amount, I would say. Although like I'm not, I mean, you can look at all the stuff I've put out there. I'm clearly not a very good designer. But in terms of actually like kind of getting your feet wet and starting to build things out yourself a little bit, it's like very user-friendly to get started.
Right. One thing that he taught me so far is that you can kind of like bypass all that stuff by just looking at other well-designed products and just mimicking that.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's kind of what I do as well too. That's why digging into like a design tool doesn't make much sense for me.
Well, but you know what? But so you do that, but then it's still way faster to build out flows in a design tool and then show people. Because like what you're optimizing for isn't creating something new with the design tool. What you're optimizing for is how quickly can I make something kind of real and show users. And so using the design tool, you can do it like 10 times faster than you would if you actually wrote code. But yeah, you're still just like kind of like getting inspiration, I guess. Sure. You're like stealing ideas from better applications or sites, and then you're putting them into the tool. You're hooking up all the screens so people can link through, or like click through, and then putting it in front of users. And then if they like it, then you just code it out. If you're someone who can code, because you could obviously just start with the code, but then it takes way longer, and it takes way longer to iterate. Whereas if you start with the design tool, it's so fast to iterate. You don't feel bad if you're just throwing stuff away.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
And I think the only reason why developers don't do that more is because it's just like a super in-demand skill. So it's kind of like we can bring someone in with less skills and they can do it, right? So I think that's why it's been like completely separated in terms of career paths. Because like a lot of designers are really like UI designers. They're not necessarily like people who can like illustrate crazy animations and whatever. Like they're kind of just like dragging around boxes and typing stuff. That's been my experience, like seeing it anyway in practice, but my experience may be totally different than what other people have seen.
Right. Yeah. And I think an interesting thing too is that UX is starting to become a big ranking signaling factor. So
you know what? You hear people say that, but I still get a bunch of super janky sites when I click through now. So like, I don't know, maybe I just don't notice it and it's slowly gotten better over time. But I still find that like super high ranking sites have like really questionable UXs. Like,
yeah, I mean, like it's just recently that they started to add those type of things. It's just now it's starting to catch up because, you know, there's mobile and then there's because I can kind of see it, right? Because like if you have like a very optimized flow, then you know people stay on longer. And
I was gonna say like I think like people are becoming less tolerant, if that's what you're saying, for poorly designed interfaces. I totally agree with that. Because like when I see those sites, I basically just like bounce now. I'm like, I don't feel like digging through this.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's also a signaling factor too, right? It's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
They don't like it, therefore it's not going to start to rank high until a competitor comes along that actually focuses on that, and they have all the other factors that matter, and then you know.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been up to with Vocomatic in terms of like developing. Trying to improve that flow. Recently launched, I don't know if I mentioned this, login with Google. So that's super exciting.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I did that on, sorry, what were you going to say?
So I was going to turn that into a like a growth loop. You know, people are coming in for free already. I might as well like incentivize them to, you know, either email out their contact list, say, hey, sign up more, and then, you know, add another one, like log in with LinkedIn, post to LinkedIn, send it to your email or send it to your connections, or log in with Facebook and then post it on, you know what I mean? So like, and then obviously you'd incentivize them to do that to get more minutes or hours, and then it's just going to blow up all over the place and just get all over the internet. I'm hoping.
Right? Yeah, one of those viral loops they talk about.
Yeah. And I think that would be interesting. And then obviously optimize for like the purchase flow, and then improve the product. And then along with that, and it's free, right? Like I don't have to spend on ads or anything like that. So,
you know what? I wonder how effective the viral loop will be though, because although I'm sure a large portion of people would want to do voice to text, I feel like a lot of your traffic is super targeted, like people looking for what you do. And I would guess like 99% of the population isn't looking to do audio transcription. So the social media posts like would be irrelevant to them. Whereas like something like Dropbox, it's like everybody has files. Like, yeah, a lot of people aren't
Right.
looking to like host them somewhere, but like at least it's like applicable generally to a wide body of people. I'm not sure the same would be true for audio transcription.
It might, in that, let's say, for example, you use LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The LinkedIn reach, actually, that I might prioritize that next. Like the LinkedIn reach organically is like actually pretty up there right now before they actually mature their ad platform. And
yeah,
like,
LinkedIn's great. You can get like thousands of views like relatively easily. Yeah.
Pretty much like a $0 CPM, which is nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if they're in an industry and they post it and other people, they're probably going to be connected with other people in the industry that do similar work, and it might be relevant to what they do, right? So maybe LinkedIn might make the most sense, whereas like Facebook not too much, but like,
yeah, I get what you're saying about LinkedIn. If you're someone who does any sort of transcription, you likely have connections that also do it. So I guess that makes sense. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I think the LinkedIn one makes the most sense, but like Facebook maybe not so much. But like signaling factor 2 is social, right? So the more people are saying the name of Vocalmatic, then that can also help with rankings as well.
That's fair. That's a good point.
So yeah, I don't know. Those are the main things. So kind of focusing on growth. Yeah. Doubling down on product, put together those numbers. I think we were talking about it earlier. We're starting to come back, which is sweet. So yeah.
Have you started focusing on like really trying to? I mean, I guess we can talk about this in another episode or just offline. I always laugh when people say stuff like that on business calls. Like, let's take this offline. Yeah. What was I going to say? So what I was going to say was, have you started focusing on trying to like kind of squeeze? I mean, I don't know if it makes sense for you to do or not, but like squeeze costs to like grow profit at all? Or are you still like more focused on top line sales?
I think mostly top line. Because like
how much do you think, I guess I've just always wondered this, how much do you think you could get out of it if you just like squeezed it? Like how much you could grow profit if you like really squeezed costs?
So what do you mean by squeeze costs? Like cut down on costs?
Yeah, like if you were like, okay, I'm gonna try and kind of like maintain the traffic. I'll keep.
I see.
Like I'll have some sort of content strategy to like try and like just like kind of stay even in terms of visitors and sales per month and whatever. Like, what are all the things I can cut out? Like Hotjar, if you're not like frequently making changes, like how much could you squeeze your costs to increase your profit?
I see.
Like how many things could you cut out without like negatively impacting the user experience?
Right. So I think I'm not thinking in terms of like squeezing and cutting out certain things, but I'm trying to, I guess, optimize more for the amount of people that are coming in. So one thing that I'm actually going to start trying too is email marketing. So, so like internally, it's like, okay, so you hit certain milestones. So I'm starting to think about like, what are the success like things that you're doing?
Yeah.
And then just kind of optimizing for those and then having touch points at those points.
Okay.
And then that's it. And then like seeing if it kind of pushes you towards like looking at the purchase page. And then even then that also has like certain touch points that you can also do too.
Gotcha.
So yeah. So not necessarily squeezing.
So you haven't thought about squeezing it all yet. You're still focused on how you can grow sales and optimize for anything that's going to help grow sales.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in a way it's kind of like squeezing, but I think it's a different, I think it's like, it's more sales basically. Same coin, different side, right? Or whatever.
Out of curiosity, so say a genie comes to you tomorrow and they're like, okay, sales isn't going to grow. What % do you think you could grow your profit by if you just like squeezed costs?
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because it's like the tools that we use are pretty. And it's,
but like Hotjar would be something you could cut out. I don't know if you're paying for that or not. I don't know what your pricing's like.
But it's like $29 a month, right? Like that gets
so that's pretty minimal.
Pretty much, right? Yeah, there's nothing that's like outrageously expensive.
I think that's awesome that you're using tools that you like and there's nothing that you can cut out.
Yeah,
or there's like minimal things you can cut out because it kind of means like it's a well-oiled machine in terms of profitability. So I guess most of the stuff that you grow at the top line can potentially come through to the bottom.
Yeah. Like if I was using something that costed like hundreds, then
Yeah.
I'd really consider like, do I really need this? Am I actually
Yeah.
making back from this thing? But like the stuff that I'm using for like less than $100 a month, and it's like I use it, right? Like for example, like this hot jar, it's like it's gonna help propel it a little bit further.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's definitely another episode that we could talk about. Like maybe like
I'm interested to hear more about Hotjar. I know like setting up Google Analytics. I mean, it's relatively user friendly, but it just like kind of takes time to take stuff and like create events and whatever. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear about Hotjar, especially if it's one of those things that's a little easier to stand up. It sounds super cool. It sounds great.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a product that it's cool. It really opens up your eyes to like what's actually happening.
Yeah. Because you said it has heat maps and whatnot in terms of like clicking and whatever.
Sorry?
Does it have heat maps in terms of scrolling as well, like the mouse position?
On Hotjar?
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that'd just be like the nerd
that.
in me likes that. Like, I don't know if I would get like use out of it or not, but the nerd in me likes to be able to be like, oh, like this is where people are looking with their cursor or whatever, right? I don't know.
Right.
Even though I guess that's not attached to their eyes, so you don't actually like really know, but I guess it's like an okay proxy. I don't know. It's kind of fun. It's fun. I like it. Cool. Yeah. Well, if you don't have anything else to add, let's cut it there.
Yeah, let's cut it there.
Perfect. All right. Thanks everybody for listening in, and we'll catch you all next week.
See ya.